at Shoviat tweets, "Hi guys, love the show. Do you think that Avatar has the potential to become a huge multimedia franchise like Star Wars?"
It really depends on what they decide to do with these next 3 movies that they're doing. I mean, in what direction that they go. Look, I firmly believe this. The next Avatar film, Avatar 2, is not going to make the money that Avatar 1 did. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be a huge, massive hit, because I believe it will be a huge, massive hit. But are they going to do it in such a way that can do a bunch of other stuff? I don't know if James Cameron has those types of aspirations. I think he's got bigger fish he wants to fry. And I don't know if he's so keen on licensing off his intellectual property to go off and do things like Saturday morning cartoons or a Netflix show or whatever. I don't know that he would want to go in that direction. Not to mention, the way he makes these Avatar movies makes it very cost prohibitive for doing something on TV or anything like that. So let's not be surprised by anything. My first reaction would probably be no, they wouldn't. I don't know, Shep, what do you think?
It's hard to tell. I mean, Cameron's always on the edge of technology, like on the cusp of it. So who's to say that he's not developing like an Avatar VR world that can be, by the time the 3rd movie rolls out, you can be part of this immersive Avatar universe. I wouldn't say that that's not possible. I'm looking forward to his Avatar films. I'm hoping that they re-release the very first Avatar, that at least maybe 6 months before they release the second one, and maybe do an up-res or an upgrade on it so that everyone can kind of get back into that world, because it'll be how many years since Avatar, the first one, came out when the second one's finally coming out? Almost 10 years. So
wow, is it that long?
Yeah, it will be when it finally shows up. Like, I think it's 2017. It's not coming out next year. So by 2017, it'll be like 10 years. So hopefully they released the first Avatar. You know, remember they came out with like 4 different special editions. Like, watch the 7-hour version. You're like, dude, it's too long. You know, so I've seen one of the versions that was like, and some extended version, some extended version. So whatever, I hope they put it back out. But I'm looking forward to it. I really liked Avatar.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal with Avatar, with the reason why he's coming back to Avatar, one of the reasons is that you can have a lot of different media versions and a lot of platforms to expose this lore on it. There's a lot of stuff with the Na'vi that you can get into. The first film, which is so visually breathtaking, it was like all the storylines took a back seat to what we were experiencing visually. So now that we've kind of gotten used to that world just a little bit, maybe we'll have a better chance to, if they re-release the first movie before we see the sequel, we can get into the actual dynamics of what's going on with the native tribe versus other people that are trying to come in there and what's happening with their environment. Now, look, James Cameron has also, I mean, he created Terminator, and we've seen what happens with Terminator. There's video games, there's novels, there was a TV show, so it would be nothing new for a James Cameron property to have that happen. I think you'll see novelizations and stuff like that. A video game. The first Avatar looks like a damn video game. Why not make a video game of the other ones coming up? So TV would be a little hard to do, though.
Just a quick fact check. So the original Avatar came out in 2009. The next one comes out in 2017. It'll be 8 full years in between sequels. Interesting. All right, what's next?
Gary tweets, "Whatever happened to the Tom Hardy Elton John biopic?"
Great question. I mean, as far as I know, it's still. I'll let you guys comment on that. Let me look something up.
I think Tom Hardy's doing the soundtrack for Sherlock Gnomes.
No.
I remember hearing about that and thinking, like, just look at Tom Hardy, then you look at Elton John, you're like, how could this? That could actually work, and he could play the guy through so much of his career, because he could still be young enough to be the early Elton John singer-songwriter prodigy days. You know, when he went on the Troubadour and
Pinball
exposed
Wizard.
himself. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things he could do through what Elton John is now. I think that it's still in the works, I believe, unless John and his research department can correct me. I think that is still something that's going on.
Tom Hardy is one of the greatest actors working in our field right now. I mean, if you haven't seen Bronson, check out Bronson. I mean, that guy is fantastic. So I'm looking forward to anything he does. So if he's playing Elton John, I'm going to check it out for sure.
Yeah, now as of, I'm just looking at some reports from back in April where, as far as I know, the project is still on. Now, back in April, Tom Hardy started talking about how I can't sing. He said this was pretty good. I'm not really drawn towards singing and musicals and that stuff. I did some rap when I was a kid, but I'm somebody's dad now, so it wouldn't be too cool to crack that out. So I'm gonna guess that when we see him in this movie, it does sound like it's still on track. It's still gonna be happening, but it's not gonna be a Meryl Streep thing. Where she's actually doing all of her own singing. I think this is going to be a situation where you see him open his mouth. There's probably going to be another vocalist.
I'm more interested to see how many piano lessons he takes, you know, because Elton John's one hell of a keyboard player.
Tom Hardy's been practicing all the time on Dub Smash. Every time you see him, like he's rocking some kind of weird hip hop thing, just you know, doing karaoke style miming, so he can easily mime Elton
Gotta
John.
say this though, one of the coolest musical things I'd ever seen was Elton John. It's a dueling piano setup with two grand pianos facing each other. Elton John and Billy Joel were rocking out on stage one time, and it was like, holy crap, that was good. All right, what's next?
Michael tweets, guys, how do airplane companies get the rights to show movies on their flights?
Yeah, it's like it's a totally just different distribution deal. Like when you make these movies, there are whole types of contracts and deals you can make. One with theatrically, then with television, then with this, then with streaming services and whatever. And one big one is like hotel chains is one, and airlines is one. So they just make a content deal. The airline pays them a certain amount of money to do it, and it's as simple as that. Any other?
There's also boats. You want to go on a boat
cruise lines have all that kind of stuff.
They got that. There's a military. There's a whole division of the military where you can license your films to the military, different military wings and divisions. I mean, you make a film, it gets cut up in all different kinds of realms, and especially if television series and shorts, all those things get dispersed throughout all media. So planes are just one part of it.
Yeah, and if you have the pleasure of riding on either the R2-D2 or BB-8 plane that just got introduced this past year, you can watch the Star Wars movies in the air for the very first time. Nothing will ever take away like the suspense of when the whoever the flight attendant is comes on the PA and you're sitting in there and you forgot, or your laptop died and you have nothing to do for 5 hours and they're about to announce the movie. Please, if you want to buy headphones for our in-flight movie, Tomb Raider 2 or whatever the hell it is, like you're like, oh man, you're really holding your breath. But now with the way they do it with movies, there's so many movies you can watch on airplanes that it kind of takes away that suspense.
I just had an incredible multi-trillion-dollar idea. Just paint an airplane completely black and only show like airplane movies, like crash disaster films, things that take place on an airplane.
I'm not sure many people would fly
Snakes
that airline.
on a plane. Come on, guys, it's fantastic.
If it was a black airplane and they showed Passenger 57, because you always bet on black.
There you go.
And he's your pilot.
Wesley Snipes is flying the plane
Snipes
too.
is your pilot. See,
Sign up
that
for it.
flight I might fly on. All right, what's next?
There's so many Christmas Bush tweets. Really quick, Chris tweets, Aunt May 2, Attack of the Christmas Bush. Aunt May 3, Return of the Christmas Bush.
Yeah. Hey, how did you read our scripts? Me and Ellis have been working on it. We were just doing a polish with Campia earlier this morning. How did you get a hold of our
I thought you only
secret...
gave the rights to the airline for that.
No. Only the dark gothic airline from the future that only plays horror movies that are set on airplanes. They have the rights.
At Curious Corduroy, and actually a lot of people want you guys to talk about Gem and the Holograms. At Curious Corduroy tweets, how do you guys feel about Gem and the Holograms being pulled from the theaters after just 2 weeks? LOL.
It was amongst the greatest box office catastrophes of all time. I mean, you had a film playing in 2,400 screens, massive wide release, made like $1 million its opening week, or somewhere in that neighborhood. Its second week had like a 90 or an 85% drop from that already abysmal number. No theaters wants to play it.
Right.
No theaters want to take up their screen time that's going to have 2 people sitting in there buying 2 people worth of popcorn and 2 people worth of soda. They want to put a movie in there that's going to have like 60 people in there or 70 people in there at least. So it was no surprise. It was the right move. And I believe Jobs might have got pulled as well. I think I heard Jobs got pulled as well, which was a massive blockbuster hit compared to Gem and the Holograms, but not performing the way they wanted to. So not surprised, not earth-shattering. It's a film that really underperformed, and they pulled it early. So, yeah, that's pretty much that.
Yeah, I think at least you can still see Jobs in smaller theaters, or at least at a theater that's playing in a major city that like might have Oscar contention, like Chicago, New York, or Los Angeles. Gem and the Holograms, Rock the Casbah was the one that bummed me out. That I think they pulled that from theaters pretty quickly too. But Gem and the Holograms was a perfect storm of just a marketing misfire, because you had a name, Gem and the Holograms, that didn't resonate with the fan base that originally loved it, and you tried to update a story for a new generation that didn't care about said name. Plus, they tried to do way too much of that movie, and it failed on almost every front. Even though I didn't hate watching the movie, I understand why it got pulled so quick.
Yeah, and I'm not bummed that I didn't get a chance to see it. It was like when I heard that it got pulled, I was like, that makes sense.
You can watch it on your black airplane.
Yeah, that's right. On the death plane.
The one good thing for Universal, though, is that the production budget on Gem and the Holograms was $5 million. So that's the one good piece of good news for Universal on that. This is going to be their big misfire on a record-crushing year. No studio in history has ever had the year that Universal just had. So one little misfire on a movie. that only cost them $5 million to make, not counting marketing and stuff like that. But they didn't spend a ton of marketing either. And I hope they didn't because their trailers sucked. But yeah, it's a misfire, but not a big hurt.
It's a great point. If there was a studio that had to swallow a $5 million hit, that money is laying between Universal's couch right now. Like Jurassic World, Fast and Furious, or Furious
Tyrannosaurus Rex just shit that out. It's like, that's nothing. Just bury that. Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Seaburn wants to know, what are the boys' favorite romantic comedies?
I love me some romantic comedies, actually. One of the things we talked about a little bit earlier was My Big Fat Greek Wedding. I really like that.
You love The Proposal. I just watched that over the weekend.
I love The Proposal.
I watched it again over the weekend. It's so good. I've seen it like 150 times. I don't know why, but it's so good. But I thought about you because I know you always talk about that one.
I love that. You know who's great in that movie? I can't remember his name on The Office, but he plays the gay character on The Office.
The guy who has
Oscar.
all
he does
careers
everything on the island. He's the stripper, he's the lawyer,
and then he marries them at the end.
That's right. Too. He's an ordained minister, and he marries them at the end. That guy, he's hilarious in that.
How many times have you guys seen this picture?
Way too many times.
I'm going to say Say Anything. That's one of my favorites.
Say Anything's a good one. Yeah. What about you, Mark?
I'm going to go with the all-time classic, When Harry Met Sally. I guess you could call Annie Hall a romantic comedy. I guess you could call There's Something About Mary a romantic comedy. And I'm also going to throw Definitely Maybe in there, which is, it didn't get a lot of recognition when it came out. It has Ryan Reynolds, and he's telling his daughter the story of who her mom is, and there's 3 different women that were in his life.
I don't even know if I call that romantic comedy. That's more like a drama comedy, but that's a wonderfully done movie. One other one that I really, really enjoy, and a lot of you haven't seen, I recommend you check this one out. It's older. It is Steve Martin's version of the Cyrano de Bergerac story. It's called Roxanne with Daryl Hannah. It's funny. It's funny, and if you've got a kid or whatever, that's cool. It's a clean movie with some off-color jokes, but pretty much straightforward, clean, really charming, fun, funny movie. Check out Roxanne if you get a chance.
Roxanne is great too, and also Fatal Attraction, hilarious movie. So this guy hooks up with a girl, she comes after him with a knife. It is fall down funny.
I was going to throw in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind as a fun movie to go through with a new girlfriend because it's about relationships.
That's a good one. All right, let's take 2 more rapid style.
Santez tweets, do you guys think that the trend of splitting movies into 2 will come to an end sometime soon? I don't think it's needed for the last Hunger Games.
Well, I mean, it depends on how many more book series, 3 or 4 part book series get picked up and turned into movies. I get why they did it for Hunger Games. I do get why they did it for Twilight. I get why they did it for Harry Potter. I mean, Harry Potter, that last book is like 800 pages. You're considering in the average screenplay is about 110 pages long. So that was totally understandable. But remember, we don't have a 3 or 4 book series turned into movies every month. I mean, it doesn't happen very often. So it really depends. I don't think you'll see it happen too much, though.
You can see how they ruined something like The Hobbit by like stretching it out into
over
3
3
movies.
films, a small book over 3 films.
I mean, I love the first Hobbit, and those second 2 movies were like, it could have been 1 movie, and it just turned the third.
I think it's a
like,
2 movie series that would have worked a lot better.
Yeah, even 2
which
movies,
originally was supposed to be.
It was supposed to be that, yeah. So.
Yeah, the next 50 Shades of Grey is just going to be 25 shades each year that they split into 2. I don't think you're going to see it anytime soon again because even though it's very financially successful to do it with huge properties, I'm just not aware. Now, again, I'm not browsing the Twilight section when I go to a bookstore, so I'm not sure what's coming up on the horizon as far as the next huge teen novel that's going to be made, but those are the movies that they split into 2 parts and not a lot of other type of movies. So if there is one out there, it'll probably happen again. I just don't see it anytime soon.
Universal Pictures has just announced 50 Shades of Bush. So keep your eyes open for that. That's the next big one coming. Okay, last question of the day.
Jesse tweets, if the character is bigger than the actor, why haven't they replaced Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones?
Because they haven't needed to. Up to this point, they just haven't needed to. If you can still use the actor in that role, why not? And there are a few precious roles where there's an exception to every rule. And I think there are a few roles that you can sit back and say, yeah, this person is so synonymous with that role, it's difficult to picture somebody else. Look, there is going to be another Indiana Jones at some point. That's not Harrison Ford. Not this next movie, because they've already kind of settled that. But at some point, we're going to get Indiana Jones movies that are not Harrison Ford. But yeah, I would just say, why haven't they replaced him? Because there hasn't been any need to replace him yet at this point.
Well, they kind of replaced him when they did that television series. They just had young Indiana Jones.
Yeah, made a young Indiana Jones.
So, I mean, you know, and they've had like
good point.
They had like the younger version of him in the 3rd movie. What was that actor's name who passed away, unfortunately?
Phoenix.
Phoenix.
River Phoenix.
River Phoenix. So, I mean, Yeah, I mean, I like what they're talking about with like, no, we're going to keep Harrison, and he's always going to be Indiana Jones, but we're going to serve it up. I know it's not going to be Mutt Jones, but they're going to give a replacement character who might take place in the 50s or the 60s, where you can continue that kind of serialized fun and not redo Indiana Jones. But if they end up doing Indiana Jones in like 20, 30 years, yeah, they'll end up having to replace Harrison Ford.
Yeah, and also even if they wanted to, it would have been harder. I mean, Harrison Ford's a pretty big actor, you know, but you can do it. I mean, if they could do it with Sean Connery playing James Bond and no longer playing Bond, and they put in Roger Moore, you can do it with Indiana Jones. It's going to be hard, but I think it's going to be the right call eventually.
Hey guys, if you like this clip, click here to watch the entire episode. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel because it'll help you stay up to date with all the stuff we've got going on here at Collider.